office, nobody could kick it. I mean, we had huge, like, jars of cough drops at the front.
All righty. Now, Ann Scott. Should I start? Okay. All righty. I hereby call the 2,298th meeting of the Milwaukee City Council to order. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America
and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, our first up is the American Legion Proclamation. And this will be introduced by American Legion Post 180 Chaplain Jerry Craig and Commander Mike Wilson. Come on up,
I don't
guys.
believe that's Mike Wilson.
I'm reading from the script, that's what I get.
David Siri, he's another officer with the post.
Just met him
And
Thursday.
he's going to be the commander because the commander gave him something to say.
Good reason.
Besides, he's cooking tacos tonight.
It's all good. Go ahead.
Okay.
You're on.
I'm going to read this. This is from Mike Wilson. I think you all know him. Mayor Gamba, am I saying that right?
Yep.
And Milwaukee City Council members. I regret that I am not able to attend this meeting and accept your proclamation recognizing the American Legion Post 180 and its service to our country, state, and especially our community. Excuse me. The American Legion is starting its 101st year of service to our nation, and Milwaukee Post 180 is beginning its 63rd year of service to the Milwaukee community. We are proud of our service to our nation and the relationship we have with the citizens of Milwaukee. One of the Legion's major programs is providing assistance to veterans in need. In this regard, Post 180 has begun a new program with the Milwaukee Police Department to address veterans in dire circumstances that the Milwaukee police officers encounter during their tours of duty. This program is known as the Corporal Diffie Veterans Fund. In support of this fund, there will be an all-you-can-eat pancake and sausage breakfast fundraiser
You all got copies.
We did.
at the Milwaukee Post on Saturday, September 7th from 9 a.m. until noon. You and the rest of the citizens of Milwaukee and adjoining neighborhoods are all cordially invited to attend this event. The Milwaukee American Legion Post is a very active post committed to community involvement, and our relationship with the city of Milwaukee is something of which we are very proud. We thank you for your support and look forward to working with the city on future endeavors. Semper Fidelis.
He's a Marine.
Michael Wilson, USMC, retired, and Commander of Milwaukee American Post 180.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good job. David's also our secretary, 3 or 4 more positions. We have so many volunteers, you know. So I just thought I'd bring you up. I always extend my time, as has been brought up before everybody came in. We're also having a benefit for Northwest Women's Veterans. This is the first thing we've really done in that capacity. Doesn't really cost you anything, but I thought it was interesting that this band's been together for a long time doing veterans, and there's a Lori Calhoun there who is going to be singing, and she's the daughter of Rory Calhoun, was the actor. Played a lot of Western movies and that kind of thing, for those that remember the old times. I also want to bring in the fact that I went to a proclaiming Clackamas County a Purple Heart county for August 7th. I went to that and sent the proclamation, and as you know, I'm trying to promote with my right arm over here some other things on the Purple Heart City, plus the Agent Orange in memory of Vietnam veterans, which now that the library is going to get done early, unless he's lying to me, we're going to have to talk about
Never
that a little bit. I would like to mention that I'm now the co-chair of the Clackamas County Advisory Committee for Veterans, and the county's putting on a stand-down at Clackamas Community College on the 12th of October. This is for homeless veterans and whatever. We've collected a whole bunch of equipment to issue them. This is a biannual type of thing. The warehouse is getting full, so I'm hoping it's going to be a success. But we're bringing in, already got buses and plan to go out throughout the county, out to Expedited and whatever, pick these veterans up and bring them in and see what we can do for them and meet them. And I'm going to be the chaplain of that activity, and I've got 2 other chaplains there in case they need some help too, and we'll work that out. If you have an opportunity to come to a stand down and see what it's about, there's a chance that we as a post could have one of these days, and we'll see how that goes. I have to commend the police department for setting this other thing up, because Brad Walters and Mick Wilson and us talking all the time about this. We've had 4 cases where we have what they call contact cards. They do the information, give them to us, and we try to see if they need help. And it's getting off where we're recording all that information, and I'm actually giving it to the homeless department at the county and get some additional help. So we'll hope to see how that works. The other thing, questions keep getting asked, and I'm sure you probably heard about it, but we now have a Legion Act signed by the President. What it's done, where the American Legion had 7 different eras of where we were in some kind of conflict, and under that aspect, they could join the Legion, and the VFW had the similar, but the Legion for 2 or 3 years here have been pushing the aspect that since December 7th, 1941, we've been in a constant state of some kind of conflict, and we're going to call it war just to make it easy. And the Legion pushed that through, which means that something I've always believed in is being in a combat zone is you get bullets and then gasoline. People fly airplanes from the States to Hawaii, to Guam, to Vietnam or Asia. And those people don't get any what we call combat credit or a ribbon to differentiate those activities. And I get in a little bit of conflict once in a while with the VFW because they believe that everybody that was in a combat zone actually getting shot at in some degree, not trying to paraphrase it right, deserves that recognition. My deal is if you put a uniform on, I don't care whether you're sitting over here at the air base or whatever, you're supporting that activity. So this is basically what they've done is they've tried to pass this and got it passed, that we always get people coming down within the city and from other places else saying they'd like to join, but we haven't been able to join them up unless they're DD 214 or whatever shows that they're actually been given that ribbon, whatever conflict that may be. So I think that's a step in the right direction, giving all Americans who put the uniform on and swore to defend the Constitution have that right now. So I just thought I'd bring that up. That'll give us a few more members to help the city, and that's the way I'm looking at it. Any questions? You never have any questions.
You explain it so well, there's nothing left.
Oh, I duplicate it, right? Okay. Well, thanks very much. We duly appreciate it. You'll send us a copy when he, okay? I just got to check. All right.
Do you want him to
Thank
read?
you.
He's going to read.
Well, you have a
Oh,
proclamation.
okay, sit down. I didn't put him on my agenda.
Whereas the American Legion was chartered by Congress on September 16th, 1919 as a wartime veterans organization based on the 4 pillars of Veterans Affairs and Rehabilitation, National Security, Americanism, and Children and Youth. And whereas the American Legion has become a preeminent community service organization with more than 2.5 million members, over 14,000 posts worldwide, supporting a variety of programs to benefit our nation's veterans, its service members, their families, the youth of America, and its citizens. And whereas Legionnaires uphold the ideals of freedom and democracy while working to make a difference in the lives of all Americans. And whereas the City of Milwaukee enjoys a strong partnership with the American Legion Post 180 and its affiliated units and organizations, and whereas the 2019 observance of American Legion Day provides an opportunity to recognize Legionnaires in our community for their many civic contributions. Now, therefore, I, Mark Gamba, Mayor of the City of Milwaukee, a municipal corporation in the County of Clackamas, in the state of Oregon, do hereby proclaim September 16th, 2019 as American Legion Day in the City of Milwaukee, and do hereby commend its observance to all citizens of the Dogwood City of the West.
Amen.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, guys.
I never get to do this, so I'm going to say thank you very much for everything you do.
Thank you, Jerry.
You too. Like your smile.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Oh, thank you. Nice to meet you.
David, good to see you. Thank you. Oh, nice.
All right.
It's busy.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mine's sideways.
Okay, our next item is Constitution Week, a proclamation. This will be introduced by the Daughters of the American Revolution, Susanna Lee Barlow, Chapter, Past Regent Phyllis Hines, Linda Kidd, and a representative to be named.
I'm joined by Ellie Nelson,
Okay, thank you.
resident of Milwaukee. The United States Constitution stands as a testament to the tenacity of Americans throughout history to maintain their liberties and freedoms and to ensure those unalienable rights to every American. The tradition of celebrating the Constitution was started by the Daughters of the American Revolution. In 1955, DAR petitioned Congress to set aside September 17th to the 23rd annually to be dedicated for the observance of Constitution Week. The resolution was later adopted by the U.S. Congress and signed into public law on August 2nd, 1956 by President Dwight D. Eisenhower. The aims of the celebration are to emphasize citizens' responsibilities for protecting and defending the Constitution, to inform people that the Constitution is the basis for Americans' great heritage and the foundation for our way of life, and to encourage the study of the historical events which led to the framing of the Constitution in September 1787. Phyllis actually has an anecdote to share.
Well, we do, it mentions the education on Constitution Week, and we do have a lot of involvement in schools, particularly during Constitution Week. For example, I will be going into an elementary school first grade team, and they'll be observing a video on the Constitution. We'll have a discussion on it. The principal will sign a proclamation, and we will do a bell ringing. And across the nation on the 17th of September at 1 o'clock, people are encouraged to ring a bell for a minute in order or in recognition of Constitution Week and the fact that we have the Constitution. As an anecdote, we had a member who really, really wanted to be able to ring a bell for our chapter, and she didn't have one, so she rang her doorbell for a whole minute, and we got to count that she was ringing a bell for the Constitution.
Oh, I love it. That's great.
So anyway, think about it. If you've got a bell, ring it at 1 o'clock on the 17th.
If not, I have a doorbell.
There you go.
There you go.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Sure. All right, and the proclamation. Whereas we, the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity, did ordain and establish a Constitution for the United States of America. And whereas September 17th, 2019, marks the 232nd anniversary of the adoption of the Constitution by a convention of the states. And whereas it is fitting to recognize this essential document on the anniversary of its adoption in accordance with Public Law 915, which guarantees that a proclamation will be issued annually by the President of the United States designating September 17th through 23rd as Constitution Week. Now, therefore, I, Mark Gamba, Mayor of the City of Milwaukee, a municipal corporation in the County of Clackamas in the State of Oregon, do hereby proclaim September 17th through 23rd, 2019 as Constitution Week in the City of Milwaukee and do commend its observance by all citizens.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, we have, on tonight's consent agenda, we have the minutes of August 6, 2019 regular session. We have a resolution authorizing an engineering services contract with Century West Engineering in the amount not to exceed $623,624 for the 43rd Avenue Safe SSMP project. A letter of support for the Hillside Manor renovation project. An Oregon Liquor Control Commission application for Parker's Hideout located at 5823 Southeast Johnson Creek Boulevard for full on-premises sales. Does any member of council wish to remove an item from the consent agenda?
No.
So the list you read was correct. There had been a work session minutes on there that I asked to be removed because I wanted to revisit some of the, I wanted to listen to the tape again and revisit a few points in the library discussion that day. So the list you read is correct. I just want to note that that had been on the agenda that people got if they saw our packet, and that's why it's no longer in there.
Okay, I would entertain a motion.
So moved.
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the consent agenda. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? None heard. It passes unanimously. Audience participation. Is anybody interested in this? Should I read this whole thing? No? No? Going once, going twice? All right. I'm skipping it. Is there any follow-up from the last meeting? It was over.
Most of the comments were actually directed to the housing conversation that we've been having as a city. So none of those require a response at this time, but we'll continue to include those in our discussions with staff. Thanks.
All right. Next up is a public hearing, expedited annexation of 5912 Firwood Street, file number A-2019-003, an ordinance. The purpose of this hearing is for council to consider the proposed annexation. This won't be presented by Brett Kelver, so instead will be presented by Vera.
Evening, Mayor, City Council. I'm Brett's understudy this evening. He is staffing the DLC meeting this evening, so I get to come up instead. The application is for an expedited annexation for the property of 5912 Southeast Firwood Street. The purpose was to connect to city sewer, which was done through an emergency connection. The applicant paid the reimbursement fee and all the applicable SDCs for the property. Upon annexation, the site will be in the R10 zone. Comp plan designation will be low density. The current use of the property is a single family home. Notices were sent to all surrounding properties, city departments, other governmental agencies and districts, and no comments in opposition to the annexation were received. Staff does not believe there are any adverse impacts to annexing the property into the city, and we would respectfully request an approval of the annexation. But I'm happy to answer any questions on Brett's behalf, if you have any.
Anybody?
I have no questions.
No?
I was just
it struck me, I don't have questions, but the black lines on the annexation, on the maps, those are, most of them do delineate, I mean, those are city boundary lines,
Yes.
right?
They are correct.
Okay.
So all of the properties on the inside of those, and if you're referring to the annexation site,
Right.
yes. So any of the properties on the inside of those lines are in Clackamas County, are unincorporated. So that whole Nisi area is.
I just wanted to
Yeah.
call that out and clarify, because that's cottage cheese or Swiss cheese.
Swiss cheese.
Checkerboard, there's a lot of
Checkerboard,
different
yes.
descriptions.
Cheese,
Yeah.
squishy.
Yeah, that whole Nisi area is very odd.
So the
when it comes to that,
report
yes.
says approximately 155 have annexed. And do we know how many remain in the Nisi area that have not annexed?
No, but that's a very easy question to answer. And we can certainly.
There
get that
was a
information
fixed
to you.
number.
So,
Yeah, okay.
yeah.
I'd
no,
be
we can-
curious.
We can very easily go through that and get that answer for you.
I was looking at, they have a new map in the city manager's office that I guess they're maybe going to replace this map eventually, and we were discussing like, okay, next week, now that one more block, and the next week, in a few weeks, 2 more blocks, and so, yeah, it's always yeah.
Well, there are 3 more properties coming up in a couple of weeks
Yeah.
at one
At
of your
the next
meetings.
regular
Is
meeting.
it the next one? And then one came in today
Yeah.
that we're asking about it, so it's sort of,
Yeah.
it keeps happening.
Have that cleaned up.
And what does it, like, what's the average time frame from when somebody comes in and has to do an emergency connection?
Right. Well, the way we process an emergency annexation is as long as they pay the reimbursement fee and the SDCs and submit the application to annex, we'll issue them the forms that they can go to the county right away to get the permits that they need to do the emergency connection. Meanwhile, we go through this process to get them annexed. So it just kind of front ends the connection piece of it so that they can do that more quickly. So they could do all of that in one day, frankly, if they had all the materials, and then be starting to dig, 2 days after that or something. So that can happen very quickly. And then we sort of go through our process here, which can take a little bit of time, but they don't have to wait for that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then I did have just one more, I just wanted to, on the map, is there a section of Hollywood Avenue that's sort of, I mean, it's clearly all right-of-way for a pretty long stretch all the way to King Road, but it looks like some of it's completely unimproved, like.
That is
looks
true.
like lawn.
Some of it is lawn, some of it, frankly, is extremely narrow right-of-way. So it feels like it's a dirt path. I think it's maybe 10 feet wide in some sections.
Is the
so
actual right-of-way 10 feet wide, or is it just the?
It's very narrow. You can see it with the property lines, how they've been drawn. So we've had a few inquiries on some of the larger properties there about flag lots and divisions and so on, and that's when we are all getting together to figure out what the dedication would be to be able to create the right-of-way that we know we need there, but it narrows, it widens, it narrows. It's very odd in that area as well. So as properties redevelop, we'll be able to grab some additional dedication and try to make that a
A
functioning
little more stream, okay.
right of way. Yeah. It's fun. You should come to one of our staff meetings sometimes as we go through all of these. It's amazing what
Well, we just
looking
had an
at now.
opportunity to ride that little alley that we've improved, near Ardenwald.
Right.
And so I thought, well, even if you never get all that dedicated right-of-way, maybe
Just a
there's an
little bit, just
opportunity
to kind of, yep,
punch
Out
through.
through there, yeah.
exactly.
Clear some brush, accessible.
All right. I would entertain a motion.
Entertain a motion. I move for the first and second readings by title only and adoption of the ordinance annexing a tract of land identified as tax lot 1S2E 30DA 03000 and located at 5912 Southeast Firwood Street into the city limits of the city of Milwaukee, file number A-2019-003.
I second.
It has been moved and seconded for first and second readings by title only and adoption of the ordinance annexing a tract of land identified as tax lot 1S to E 30DA 03000 and located at 5912 Southeast Firwood Street into the city limits of the city of Milwaukee, file number A-2019-003. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? None heard. Passes unanimously. Ms. Ober, would you please read the ordinance by title only, twice?
An ordinance of the City of Milwaukee, Oregon, annexing a tract of land identified as tax lot 1S2E30DA, space 03000, and located at 5912 Southeast Firwood Street into the city limits of the City of Milwaukee, file number A-2019-003. And again, an ordinance of the City of Milwaukee, Oregon, annexing a tract of land identified as tax lot 1S2E30DA, space 03000, and located at 5912 Southeast Firwood Street into the city limits of the City of Milwaukee, file number A-2019-003.
Mr. Stoffer, would you please poll the council?
Councilor Heisey?
Aye.
Council President Faulkner?
Aye.
Councilor Beatty?
Aye.
Councilor Parks?
Aye.
Mayor Gamba?
Aye.
Motion carried 5-0, ordinance 2178.
Good job. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, the next public hearing, adoption of supplemental budget resolution. The public hearing on the proposed supplemental budget is called to order. Purpose of this hearing is to take public comment on the proposed appropriations. This will be reported on by our Finance Director, Bonnie Dennis.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council. So tonight I bring to you the supplemental budget. The supplemental budget was discussed with the Budget Committee back in August 12th. Within the budget supplemental, there are two items. There is the transfer of funds from the city manager's department to the finance department. And then the second item is the building inspections fund, which has received quite a bit of revenue in this past year. But with that, we've had some growth, and with the growth requires additional contractual services to do inspections. So with that, I'm proposing that we do a supplemental to transfer $100,000 in the building inspections fund to offset the contractual services with using the revenue that we've received. So with that, I'm proposing that I can answer any questions that you may have, or if you would like to ask the building official, who is also here as well. If not, that's all I got.
Any questions?
No questions.
Have we received any additional correspondence on this topic? Nope. Does anyone wish to comment on this topic? Seeing none, I won't read all that stuff. Does council have any questions? Any more questions for staff?
I move to close public hearing.
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded to close public hearing. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None heard. The testimony part of the hearing of the proposed supplemental budget is hereby closed. Is there any council discussion?
We discussed this at the Budget
Right,
Committee
we just
meeting, as
talked
was
about it.
said, so I think
Yeah.
we all, we had our discussion then. There was no particular concern.
Yeah, everybody on the budget committee was comfortable because I was not here.
Yep.
It's good.
Cool. All right. Well, then is council ready to vote?
I'll move to approve the resolution authorizing budget supplemental for the 2019-2020 biennium.
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the resolution authorizing budget supplemental for the 2019-2020 biennium. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, passes unanimously. Good job. Thank you.
Thanks, Bonnie.
And she's there for the next
She's
item.
here for the next one, too.
Yeah.
All right. City Hall bond discussion and approval, a resolution. This is to adopt a resolution authorizing full faith and credit obligations to fund purchase of a new city hall. And this will also be introduced by our Finance Director, Bonnie Dennis, and John Peterson.
Hi.
Hi.
Hello again. So I'd like to formally introduce John Peterson. He is our municipal financial advisor with Piper Jaffray. So he is here tonight to help present with me to do the bond resolution. But before I go into details on the full faith and credit obligation that we are looking for, I wanted to discuss a little bit about the project. So we went to you all last Tuesday for the City Hall purchase, and by resolution you approved the purchase of the City Hall. And with that, we are going forward with a bond council and bond resolution to receive debt on the new purchase. As discussed previously, we discussed that the purchase will be a great deal of benefit for the city. From a financial perspective, there's a lot of efficiencies gained with both the citizens and the city employees for Milwaukee. Some of those items are hidden costs that we'll be able to reduce by having all of our centralized locations, our city service locations in one place. And then also just generally it's a good benefit for the city. As opposed to having construction. So by purchasing a building outright versus construction, there's a cost savings there. So there's a lot more information highlighted in the staff report for you. And if you have any other questions on that, please let me know. But with the purchase of the building, the finance team has completed a 5-year financial forecast to see where we would stand. In the staff report, I outlined the general fund, and then I also outlined a new City Hall fund. So the new City Hall fund will be coming back to you, as well as a supplemental budget for the purchase of the building later this summer into November. So the one thing that I want to point out with the general fund is that you will see that there is a deficit starting in fiscal year 2023. This is not unusual. We usually do have a deficit that comes in outlier years, but you'll see also outlined in the report that there is quite a bit of savings that we have. From time to time, we always see that deficit that happens, but we also see quite a bit of a savings in vacancies, capital projects that are completed, and also just general savings in materials and services. So although we do see a deficit, we also will see a savings. In that financial forecast, I did also update for potential for recession, and then also PERS, the increase in PERS that's coming up. So with that, we feel pretty confident that we can move forward with the debt for the new City Hall purchase. So we are looking for a full faith and credit debt obligation, which is about 20 years. It is a taxable bond versus a non-tax, and that is because we are doing a lease back purchase. We don't really have a choice in that. We need to go forward with the taxable bond. And really what that means, and John can probably answer this better than I can, but it's the investors have to pay tax on the interest that they receive. But the benefit to us really is there's really no tax impact to us. Usually what happens with a taxable bond is that it has a higher interest rate. But the interest rate is actually in a historic low. So the spread between a tax exempt versus a taxable bond is pretty slim. So we feel that going forward with a taxable bond and a permanent rate and not refinancing in a couple of years is the way to go. Mm-hmm. So, do you have anything to add? Yeah.
I guess first, maybe if there are any questions, I'd be glad to address those. But
so a taxable bond, I mean, is there a danger that nobody will buy it?
There is, okay. If it were sold today, there is zero danger that nobody would buy it. We're in a kind of volatile political and economic environment in which the news can change pretty rapidly. So I wouldn't say there's no danger, but I would say the danger of there not being buyers for the taxable bond is equivalent to the danger of there not being buyers for a tax-exempt bond.
Okay.
Okay. Can change in the space of 142 characters.
fewer.
Or fewer?
A credible China trade deal could make a big difference. But,
Pretty astonishing.
but that would make actually well, it would be great news for stocks and great news for people. And as is the dismal fact about my business is that what's bad for people is usually good for bonds, and vice versa. What's good for people is usually bad for bonds.
So I was going to ask, is this, them being so close, is this one of the other indicators that a recession is nigh?
More the shape of the yield curve than the total compression. I guess the super low levels indicate that the market believes that a recession is nigh. And we've seen some inversion in the yield curve, which means that the rates for 3-month bonds are higher than the rates for 10-year bonds. And I had a professor that said a yield curve inversion has predicted 9 of the last 7 recessions.
That's a good one.
In other words, you didn't always get a recession with an inversion, but if you got a recession, you had an inversion before it started. So it seems, I don't know, we live in strange times. I can't really project, one way or another. The reality is that the interest rates are exceedingly low. I just today at market close, the 10-year Treasury bond was a 147, and historically it's more like 3%. The all-time low in 2016 was a 132. So we're not at the all-time low, but we're very near. Generally speaking, Generally speaking, it is not worth moving heaven and earth, but certainly worth taking some measures to avoid issuing taxable debt, because the benefit in lower interest cost of issuing tax-exempt debt is usually considerable, and it's just not that much right now. It is somewhat likely that if we were to do a temporary financing to cover the period of the lease back and then do a permanent financing when the city's ready to occupy the new building, it's somewhat likely that a tax-exempt financing then would be at a lower rate than a taxable financing today, but only somewhat likely. And not so likely that the cost of doing 2 financings would be outweighed. Is kind of where we came to. The rates are so low that it's cheaper to do 1 financing now at a taxable rate than to do 2 financing. The rate would have to be so good on that second financing. It just seems unlikely that it would be such. Very unlikely. And if rates are that low, then we can refinance.
We redo it, yeah. So
is there a benefit to just knowing, that having that rate set for 20 years in terms of your planning? Is there any benefit to that?
Yeah, it's definitely easier for planning, absolutely. But I think whatever is the best interest of the city. So if we get the permanent rate, and if we do come back and we do see that it's at a lower rate, and then we can decide then. But for planning purposes, yeah, it's definitely an easier.
It's kind of an odd artifact of the inverted yield curve that I was talking about earlier, is that the rate on the short-term borrowing taxable is not noticeably better than the rate on a long-term taxable borrowing. And so that's really the unexpected piece. You would expect that temporary financing would be at a much lower cost, and it just isn't. Construction financing often is expensive when it's project finance and it's a developer and they don't have that much skin in the game. But when it's backed by a AA rated city, you usually can get short-term financing at very, very low rates, and that's just not the environment we're in. The long-term rates are essentially every bit as good as the short-term rates, and so there's a benefit to saying let's lock up a great long-term rate, and then if in 3 years there's something better, we can do something then, but we've locked up certainty at a very good interest rate.
Yeah, makes sense.
I hope I'm including everybody. I don't mean to just look one direction.
You already convinced me.
Well, I wasn't here to convince. But
any other questions? Okay, thank you. Then I would entertain a motion.
So I have to put my glasses on. If somebody else is ready, go ahead. I'd move to approve a resolution authorizing financing for City Hall and providing for related matters.
I'll second.
It has been moved and seconded to approve the resolution authorizing financing for City Hall and providing for related matters. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None heard. It passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Have a new City Hall. One step closer. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right, Arts Committee membership expansion and ordinance. This action requested is to approve an ordinance expanding the Arts Committee membership, and this will be introduced by our City Recorder, Scott Suffer.
Yes, thank you. If you recall, on August 20th, Jordan Imlaw and Adams, the chair of our Arts Committee, presented to you and made the suggestion that it might be a good moment to expand the membership of the Arts Committee, and at that time, Council gave direction to do just that. The one bit of discussion, I believe, was how do we structure it so that maybe in the future, Council doesn't have to retract and expand given the committee's history. We worked with the City Attorney, Jordan and I did, to craft language for an ordinance that we think as simply as we could, because we could get down some rabbit holes on language pretty easily with this, but we don't want to lock any future council in or staff. So we think we came up with a pretty simple solution. The language in the ordinance suggests between 7
Between 7 and 9.
It says that. And we think that's the cleanest way to do this, but we're open to any other suggestions. But the only other thing I'll throw out there, so the ordinance does just what you directed us to do 2 weeks ago. We know from Arts Committee liaison and chair that the folks who will be appointed, assuming the ordinance is adopted, are eager to go, and the committee is eager to have them on board. And I'm sure it'll come up later, but First Friday is this Friday, and the art gallery here at City Hall is already beginning to look a little different, and the hands and the help from the new members would be most welcome. So with that, we're happy to answer any questions, but it's pretty much the direction you guys gave us 2 weeks ago.
Mm-hmm.
I don't really have any questions about it. I guess I just wonder if we won't, in other committees, also want to, start amending to give ourselves some flexibility in the numbers, as
So part of the discussion is that we will be coming back when we're opening up all the codes starting in January, and we have had a discussion. Scott's asked to be able to do some cleanups across the board. So feel free to send him your thoughts about what you'd like us to at least provide some language around, if you'd like to see some of that, and we can talk about options at that time. But we get into one of the staff's number one concerns is just the quorum issue. So if you make the committee too high, and it's not based on, and a quorum is not based on how many people are appointed, then we run into some issues. But there may be some language about how many are appointed instead of how many are available that might help us with the quorum issues moving forward. So those are the types of questions we're looking at in the next round.
Any?
Looks good.
Nope. Okay. Then I would entertain a motion.
All right, I'll move for the first and second readings by title only and adoption of the ordinance amending Milwaukee Municipal Code 2.17.020, Arts Committee membership.
I'll second.
It has been moved and seconded for first and second readings by title only and adoption of the ordinance amending the Milwaukee Municipal Code 2.17.020, Arts Committee membership. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? None heard. It passes unanimously. There you go.
I think it's an ordinance.
Yeah, we had some.
Oh, you do have to read it.
Yeah, I
Have
know.
fun.
Okay. An ordinance of the City of Milwaukee, Oregon, amending Milwaukee Municipal Code, MMC 2.17.020, Arts Committee membership. And again, an ordinance of the City of Milwaukee, Oregon, amending Milwaukee Municipal Code, MMC 2.17.020, Arts Committee membership.
Mr. Stauffer, please poll the council.
Councillor Heisey.
Aye.
Council President Faulkner.
Aye.
Councillor Beatty.
Aye.
Councillor Parks.
Aye.
Mayor Gamba.
Aye.
Motion passed 5-0, ordinance 2179.
All right.
Okay.
And then, Part B,
The important stuff.
Art Committee appointments, a resolution. This is also going to be presented by our illustrious.
Well, quite simply, it's the extension of what you just did. So happy to report that we had, well, not happy to report, we had 2 vacancies earlier in the year, but happy to report there was a good candidate pool of interested folks wanting to be on the Arts Committee. There was a interview panel convened, and happily 4 members were identified and are here nominated for council consideration to be appointed to the now 9-member Arts Committee. The staff report has their name, and I know, Mr. May, you like to include those names for the record, so let me pull up the packet and jump to that point, and those names are
69, RS 69.
RS 69. The names in the resolution that council is being considered would be Alicia Hamilton, Julie Ratcliffe, Laura Steenson, and Samantha Swindler.
Excellent. This will be Alicia Hamilton's second round. She was on the inaugural group.
Yeah.
Nice. All right. Any further discussion? Then I would entertain a motion.
Go for it.
I move to approve the making appointments to the Milwaukee Arts Committee.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded to approve the making appointments to the Milwaukee Arts Committee.
It's probably the resolution making appointments to the,
Yes.
yeah. There's a word missing there.
There's a word.
I was like,
I was just going with it.
We know what we mean.
Resolution.
I'm too tired to. Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None heard. It passed unanimously. Congratulations.
Thanks.
All right. And on a similar vein, board and committee youth members discussion. This will also be reported by
This is just the evening of Scott Stauffer.
Yes.
Be very quick, but I'm going to try to steer from here. Yep, looks like I can. Okay, good. Well, I'm just going to launch in, and will catch me if I forget a detail. It's pretty much laid out in the staff report, and this is a discussion. There's no real formal action being asked for tonight, but we're just looking for feedback from council. Over the last couple of years, council has expressed interest in engaging youth. Civic involvement and public engagement is one of your goals, and in particular, an item that's come up and we've seen in other cities is a youth involvement, youth board of some kind. So staff heard that. We've taken a thought process into that, and here's what we are proposing. Many cities have youth boards. There are some concern about the agenda for those boards and staffing for boards completely dedicated to youth issues, and how beyond you get all those things figured out, how then you make them really engaged and plugged into the policies the city is working on. So instead of forming our own youth board, we're proposing that we embed or add two voting youth members to select standing committees that we already have. The city has, at any given moment, we have 14 to 15 standing committees, boards, commissions, and task forces. 11 are your standing ones that are in the code. And then there's some task force and things that comp plan advisory committee that come and go. So we took a look at those, and we thought that some, especially for a pilot program, and so we really know how this is going to play out, may not be the best for at least the first round, or there may be a couple planning commission and budget committee where those groups are empowered with state law requirements and certain regulatory things that we didn't want to get too deep in. So we precluded those or excluded those. The audit committee meets maybe 4 times a year. So we thought that wasn't maybe going to be enough for any youth member to get any significant feed on. Kellogg Good Neighbor is the other one that I think we didn't include just because that's such a specific mandate, and the committee membership there is already pretty locked down to very specific representatives. The Public Safety Advisory Committee is sort of a similar, every committee position is spoken for, but there's a history there, and I couldn't find out a whole lot about it, but at one point PSAC had had a youth spot on it, a youth representative on it. So we included PSAC because we like to bring that back. And the issues there, of course, are issues that students deal with all the time. So these are the 7 committees that staff identified, and we met with the staff liaisons with these committees, so this isn't a surprise to anybody. Brett knows DLC is on here, Katie knows the library board, Peter knows trees on there, Jordan knows that art's on here, so CUAB. And I think these committees have actually started talking about this concept of including youth members, voting youth members on their board. So the concept is, instead of a standalone youth board, is we're going to appoint up to 2 youth representatives to each of these boards. And these are the ones we identified. So should we get council direction to proceed with this? The idea is this fall and early winter we would recruit. We've already had conversations with Milwaukee High School administration and Portland Waldorf School, and we have a meeting with LaSalle next week, the high school populations that our city serves. And so we're going to, and they're very enthusiastic. Even before meeting with them, LaSalle has expressed great interest in working with us, Portland Waldorf, Milwaukee High. Yes, let's do this. No fear that we won't find students. I mean, we have the high school students.
I had a question about that.
Yeah.
And this is showing my ignorance for the North Clackamas School District's system of dispersion of students. So do any of our students end up at
Rex
Putnam?
Yes.
They do. That's what I was going to bring up, because Island Station kids go to Rex
Well,
Putnam.
and so do El Puente kids.
Do they?
Okay.
Yeah, because the immersion program.
So I would suggest that we also reach out to Rex Putnam.
Yes.
Well, and this might be a good time to ask the question, too. I was wondering how we outreach to be able to also include homeschool, because there's a number of homeschool students.
We have programs at the library, so we can put some of the information up there.
Pilot, of course, and
Well, and NCSD
Facebook.
has that Web Academy or whatever, that is the way a lot of
And
kids that are homeschooled, so there may be some way.
There's a Clackamas Middle College on 82nd, which I think is not an NCSD program, and New Urban High School is just in Oak Grove, too.
That's,
Absolutely.
we
We started with the high schools that are physically here, but our definition, as kind of outlined in the staff report, of a youth member is anybody between 15 and 18 who lives in the North Clackamas region. That's where we're starting, and we would absolutely, like Ann said, advertise at the library, reach out to any. This is just the hubs where a lot of these high school kids age folks hang out.
For sure, Instagram and Facebook, and
yeah, we'll work on outreach. That would be
that's where all this crowd is.
If we get direction, we would be through all those options this fall, early winter, and hopefully January, February. The goal is to have a good pool of candidates from as many students, any region, Milwaukee residents. Some of our committees don't have residency requirements for all the positions. So, I mean, if they go to Clackamas High or, we're not going to preclude anybody.
Right.
And we'll go out to where all the high school kids are.
Good.
Cool.
So that'd be the goal with sorry, go ahead.
I did have a question. Would you mind going back to the last slide? So none of those have residency requirements? Because I think PSEC does.
Right, some do, but not. I think I meant to say not all positions on those committees are required to be residents. Each
of them has some
ability.
some ability for someone outside of the city to serve.
Well, and with this being a pilot project, it could probably fly under its own wings for a bit on could be out of the area even if it doesn't currently.
Well, I don't know. If you're making them voting members, I mean, don't they have to be in accordance with whatever our ordinance says?
Except it would also be adding more people, and our ordinances don't say that, so.
These are advisory bodies, largely for you. So we are doing this by resolution right now because these are yours to do with as you deem appropriate.
Yeah.
If it looks like this is successful and we can put it into code, we'll write it as a part of Scott's cleanups when we start working on the cleanups next year. But right now, we didn't want to go through a large, arduous process when really the decision of who votes on this is you. You decide who votes on this. So we felt like we could, for a pilot program, short-term, do this solution. It was important to me that the students vote, because if they don't vote, they're not showing up.
Absolutely.
And so this is just an easy fix for right now. I do, just real fast, want to say this list does not mean that every one of those boards is going to have members on it. The student has to care about the topic, and so if we don't end up with an engineering or architectural student or a future planner who wants to be involved in DLC will not have appointments. This is by choice of the individual. We want this to be same for our adult population of we care about the topic, we want to give here. So we'll see how the applications come in.
And there would be interviews just like with
That
any
you
of
will
our
do.
other committees, and that's important too, so,
It's part of the growth.
yeah,
The-
absolutely.
The timeline would be to recruit for the next 3-4 months until we have a pool. If it happens in 2 months, that's fabulous. We'd set up an interview process. You'd get an email from Amy. You'd say, which counselors can sit on these panels? And then we'd do the same exact process that we
Sure.
use for everybody else.
I would be interested in tracking residency, just,
Oh, sure.
you know,
And we do.
so we know. Yeah.
For all applications, we do.
Yeah.
That's a kind of a good segue to our application form, which we have been bringing youth, minority folks into, people of minority age, into adult world, a public forum. There are extra precautions and things we need to take care of. Part of that is the application form. A lot of the cities in the region, and it was recommended to us by our risk manager folks, that we get a parent, guardian authorization signature on the application, and I'm blanking now, but there's 1 or 2 other things that we'll do to make it a youth. We'll have a separate youth application. It'll largely look like our regular application, which includes a residency question. So, yeah, we would track that, and there would be a unique form which we would plan to also translate into Spanish as well.
Great.
Cool.
So for now, especially the Arts Committee, but also I think PSAC and Tree Board and Library, are all fairly large committees where 2 members doesn't really skew the quorum issue so much, but on DLC and CUAB, where you've only got 4 or 5 members, that kind of changes the quorum. Yeah.
It definitely has the potential to do that, yeah.
Yeah.
The 5 to 7 is a bigger jump than what's PSAC got, 11 to 13. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
So, like I said, we hope by winter we have a pool, we do interviews, we have a good group of folks to be appointed. We propose, since this is a pilot program, we're just seeing how this goes, a 1-year initial appointment with the eligibility of a second year in 2021, so they could potentially be on until 2022. The way we talked about this with the schools we have so far is that we kind of be looking for sophomores and juniors. The idea that they'll be around at least for a year or 2 to get oriented the first year, get their sea legs on the committee, and then the second year they could, continue to grow and get that experience. Would we preclude seniors from applying? No, because those members could then also, one day become regular, but not regular, just members of the committee in their own right, at large. So we wouldn't preclude seniors or freshmen from applying, but we're looking for kids who are going to be around for a couple of years, which we are for any volunteer for our committees. You don't want to make an appointment all the time. And then in 2021, so assuming we get appointments early 20, terms run for a year, that means in early 2021 we'll come back and give you an update, how it's gone, the effects, how we're able to recruit for all these positions, and just kind of reevaluate it. And that would be kind of a good trigger point we've talked about as staff as this is working out great. Let's add 2 youth members to these 3 committees or 4 committees or all 7 or all of, I don't know. That's when we'd codify things. That's kind of what we're proposing. But so that's that. We did, in the staff report, note a couple of issues. The staff liaisons, kind of speaking to what you were saying, the ability of 2 new positions to a smaller committee affects the potential will of the committee in terms of making advisory recommendations to council. It also could pose quorum issues if they're already kind of struggling to get quorum anyway. And we were told that in some cities, I think maybe Wilsonville, they have where the quorum for youth voting members is only essentially in effect from September to May, and then June, July, and August, or maybe it's June, but then the summer months, it's relaxed so that in the event that kids aren't available as much in the summer, the committee can still do its work. We're not 100% sure how we'd structure that in a resolution for a program, because it cuts both ways. If you excuse a quorum for the summer for select members, then you kind of open yourself up to calendaring, scheduling, certain, not that anybody would be that devious or Machiavellian, I guess, I don't know. So that's out there. We're still kind of wrestling with that. If later I'll ask for feedback on that particular, if council has any thoughts about how to address quorum. The concern is really not to hamstring a committee. We make an appointment and then two of its members are on vacation or doing really worthwhile summer activities, but they're not in town and can't attend a meeting. So that's one thing. And then, as I noted earlier, we're very aware that this is a public forum. Minors are welcome to come in at this point, but making them officials, volunteer appointees, that kind of brings us to a new level of we're engaging with volunteers under the age of 18 and that want to safeguard ourselves and the city and them, protect them from anything that could happen. And so we're aware of that. We've reached out to Human Resources and our Bonnie, our risk manager. We've got some, the one on never be alone rule and what the committee, the official activities of the committee, where they should be and where they shouldn't be. So those kinds of things we're taking into advisement. And that's one of the things we'll also be monitoring as we go along in the pilot. If we were to go forward in the pilot program, is to make sure that everyone's being kept safe. So those are the issues we've identified at the moment. Maybe this is a good point to ask questions. There were 5 questions listed in the staff report, which I was going to walk through next. If council have anything else they want to say at this point, or should we just go ahead? Okay. So the first, we've identified 7 committees, and I can scroll back. There they are. Oops. Are these the right committees for inclusion in the pilot program?
These are certainly, for the pilot program, and then we see what happens. Yeah.
Sure.
I mean, when I first read it, I thought, oh, this is too many. Like, oh, we should do arts and, PARB and PSAC and, maybe library, because those would be the natural things you would expect youth to be interested in. But if you're doing the outreach to all the schools, I mean, I guess there's no reason to limit it.
Let them self-select.
We'll see what happens. Yeah.
And would there, we could always choose to not seat, what you said earlier. And I get, would the outreach and application include descriptions of each of those so that people can identify which ones they might be interested in? Because maybe we'll get no one who's interested in one of those, and it's just doesn't matter.
We've been providing that to the principals as we've been meeting with them and talking through the committees.
Yeah, and there was discussion, I think, maybe not so much UAB, but DLC, there was some serious staff discussion about those very things. But then it was also brought up that there are professional, even outside of the regionality and the high schools right in front of us, there's some, there are professional, I think Steve Adams brought up engineering groups that would very much like to help us find or connect us with these kind of students that they are aware of in the region. I mean, so, yeah, it's noted. And if it doesn't work out for certain committees, then...
Yeah, I mean, there was one of, I feel like I just learned something about a high school mentoring program that architects run.
Yep.
So,
Yeah, we had somebody talk to us about it.
Yep.
Yeah.
Oh, maybe.
anyway, yeah.
So we're comfortable with this group of 7? Changes minus, okay. Second question, our youth definition in the staff report is, like I mentioned, 15 to 18, generally from the North Clackamas area, Milwaukee. Like I just mentioned, we're not going to really preclude anybody outright. No, the seniors can apply. Somebody from the school district, Happy Valley, I don't know. I don't think we would turn an application down. We'd certainly leave it to the interview panel to do its thing, as it does for all of our volunteers. But does that work for you? Is there an element missing? 15 to 18 generally from the area, but we're not going to turn anyone away, really.
Right. Sounds reasonable.
I mean, I would maybe put some language in somewhere that, I don't know. I mean, I just would want to preserve the ability to prioritize Milwaukee residents somehow.
I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Kids are a lot more mobile than a lot of adults. And if what we're looking for is to see how youth involvement and people who care about the subject works, then if they live in Oak Grove or whatever, I mean, I'm not sure I would care.
No, and certainly all of the kids in unincorporated aren't going to get an opportunity to engage with the city.
True.
If they engage with us.
Yeah.
My one thing that I was toying with is the kids from Happy Valley do have actually a lot of opportunity to engage.
Right, and they have their youth council there.
So I might not include the kids from Happy Valley.
Sure.
I don't know if that sounds weird, but I think the unincorporated kids, a lot of them think of Milwaukee as their city anyway.
And are you thinking just our UGMA or including Oak
I would go all the way down to.
I think you got to go to Oak Grove.
Gladstone.
There's some
Yeah.
probably
We
pretty
can
smart,
include
talented
language
people
that
there.
talks about Milwaukee being your home. What Milwaukee is and what that boundary is doesn't matter as
Right.
much. But if you come downtown or you shop at the Safeway,
Yeah.
or if there's a reason that you consider this to be your neighborhood,
Right, if
then
you're
come.
vested in it, then.
Yeah, so it's not just a resume builder for college applications, but it actually is
Right.
meaningful in a
Although
home kind of way.
people will, I mean, there are plenty of people who think they go to the Bomber and they're in Milwaukee, you know.
Of course.
So they'll answer that question,
that's-
yes, because I go to the Bomber.
Yeah.
That's what I mean, because
Yeah.
Milwaukee, as far as most people are concerned.
Including news
stands
organizations.
Clear down,
Yes.
Right,
stands
well,
clear down to the border of Gladstone.
Yeah.
if you think you live in Milwaukee, you don't think you live in Happy Valley.
right.
And I think that was
And
sort
you
of the
know the difference, that's for sure.
Some people in our UGMA think they live in Happy Valley.
I just think
Yeah.
it's important,
The
too, to
mall
keep in
is a
mind
mall.
that this is a pilot project, and in a pilot project, you more or less experiment,
Right,
and you
right.
see what works, and you refine it as you go, and so I'm willing to, go by trial and error.
Yeah, it might teach us some things, on either side of that question about membership, generally speaking, on some of our
Yeah, we'll see what
committees.
happens.
I will say anecdotally, we have had the applications in this last year have included a lot of non-residents who, from south and north, frankly, who consider Milwaukee to be their community, and
I know.
and they've wanted to be a part of our.
Yeah, I mean, I know somebody who's east, but just east, and he's applied for a couple of committees, yeah.
So 15 to 18 is sort of the only hard data point. Everything else is sort of ish. Okay, and that's okay, everyone. Third question. We've struggled with this. I think the most of the conversation we had with our staff liaisons was the potential ramifications for a quorum and how you can structure it. The only concrete thing that kind of everyone's head shook and I could see that, but how you say that in code eventually or in a resolution is the summer off thing, but then that's sort of a double-edged, we're still chewing on this. I can't tell you exactly what we'll present to you in 2 weeks' time or whatever on this, but any input you or thoughts you have on what this could do to quorum and what we should do?
So my concern, based on a couple of the committees we have had kids on, totally depends on the kid, right? Sometimes they are on it and they show up and they're into it, and other times, and so if you ended up with 2 kids that almost never showed up, and you're on, say, CUAB, and then you have 2 of the adults can't make it some week, you just got yourself in quorum hot water because you don't have. So.
We're also asking you, as you're doing the interviews, to assess whether or not you think that the student is able to make the commitment that they're trying to make.
Right. That is, and especially if we have multiple candidates.
Yeah.
I mean, again, I'm thinking back to when we used to do the youth leadership program, and we made it quite clear to people that there was competition for these seats and that they were to be dedicated to the program if they, chose to continue with the.
Do we have, for regular members, do we have a percentage of meetings you have to make?
There's
I think
usually
it varies
3.
by bylaw,
Yeah.
but
if you miss 3 meetings in several of the bylaws, then you are no longer. You're
3 meetings with unexcused.
The code of conduct you guys adopted last fall, I think it is 3.
It is.
Yeah.
And that's not necessarily codified at this point, but it is definitely in the code of conduct that you're asking everyone to sign.
some of them actually do have it in their bylaws.
Yeah.
And it's a percentage, I think, not a number.
Yeah, I was going to say, it varies, I think, and that's something we should probably standardize.
Right, when we review all those again, we should make it more standardized.
What about, is there any thought, maybe, and I'm not sure exactly how to translate this from my brain, but so, the vice president, for example, only votes when there's a tie. Is there some ability to make it a voting, under certain circumstances so that we don't run into that problem? So there is.
Then
I
it's
was
not
going to
gonna be
suggest a
valuable.
different
I mean,
approach to the quorum question, in that we don't change the quorum numbers. So if you have currently a 5-member committee, quorum is 3. Just leave that as quorum, whether there's kids there or not. That way the quorum, you still can, I mean, you could end up
Well,
with
doesn't
2
it
kids
say a
and 1 adult.
majority of members?
That defies the definition of quorum. Yeah.
It does, but we're doing a pilot thing here, and we don't know whether the kids are going to show up, right? So you could end up, there are a lot of times that PSAC, well, not PSAC, CUAB, there's 3 people there.
DLC was down to 3 people, period, at one point earlier
Right.
this year.
Yeah.
So you could have several meetings where, and CUAB actually, they have a schedule, they have to get things out to us, they have to get stuff done. It's not like, so I'd be a little nervous about hamstringing them, sticking that they have to have 4 people just because there's 2 kids that got put on there.
Well, is there an argument to be made for taking CUAB off the list?
No, I don't know, because I think there might be kids that for some reason that would interest them, because it is kind of, it's for real policy, and there are going to be wonky kids that are into that.
Oldest great-grandson were here, he would be on QAD all over it, and he's 14.
Any debate team member is going to be interested in CUAB if they're worth their salt.
You called me out. One of the concerns that we had, the reason that we're doing these as voting members, is the same one that I'm a little concerned with about removing the requirement to attend. If they're not a part of the quorum, they're less likely to come.
Yep.
Right.
And you sort of create the self-perpetuating outcome of, well, if I don't come, it's not a big deal. And then they don't come, and then it's not successful. And so I've been trying to treat them as much as I can like full-fledged members, so that they feel that pressure in order to participate. That's what volunteering is. I think that the summer months in particular are unique for us, that some of these students go away to work, right? They go to camp to work, or they have parents that they go visit out of state and they spend the summer away from here, or there's a variety of things that happen. I don't want to lose them just because they leave for that 3-month period. So my recommendation is that we continue to talk. If you have thoughts about how we could construct that, we'd love to get those in email before we come back and present. I'd really like to keep these as legitimate as possible.
That's valid.
Until the moment when we know that it could break them out of the system. And the breaking them out of the system is usually summer.
Yeah.
So is there, and I heard you say that you want to get this in email, so I apologize, but
That's okay.
Is there any reason we couldn't just do you can only miss no more than 3 meetings, and if you have planned absence, we expect you to call in? I mean, that's
fair.
I think
That's
you've
what
got
we
to be
do.
able to do that.
Yeah, I mean, unless you're, in New Zealand or
I
someplace.
don't think it would have worked for my camp counselor days, but for my going and visiting family days, it probably would have worked.
Yeah.
Well,
And
especially,
it's a choice.
I mean, now all these kids have their own phone, they're not reliant on somebody else for a phone. I lost my train of thought.
We've got a week.
Oh, so linking the code of conduct, that was my thought was the application. Like, to me, this application is maybe a little more involved than our regular application, because it links to each of the committees and their descriptions, but also links to that code of conduct. And that, please, I check a box. I have read the code of conduct and am prepared to comply with it, or something like that.
My parent has read it.
My parent has read it and has signed it.
We have to do that for youth sports, soccer. Have the same commitments.
Yeah.
And it can be a blood sport to serve on a committee.
Okay, Okay, we're chewing on it, and we've referenced when this is coming back, just before I forget to say it, I think we wanted to have more than just a 2-week turnaround to chew on this a little more, and since we're looking at appointments really next year, and we haven't met with one of the schools yet, I think we have a date on the calendar in mid-October. I think it might be October 15th. So this is coming, sounds like this is coming back. We're going to get the go ahead. So, all right.
Okay.
Any more thoughts on quorum? Send us an email.
No.
Okay. So generally speaking, we're appointing up to 2 youth voting members to these 7 committees. Is this, when you've talked about youth engagement and youth council, that youth board kind of term been thrown around, does this meet council's objectives? Is this not obviously the whole part of the public engagement that Ann and Kelly are working on, but in terms of what we can do with our boards and commissions, does this meet it for council? Are we missing anything?
I would just say if we seat another temporary, like a task force,
right,
also that there would be opportunity for youth positions.
Well,
Well,
we're
and
also
when we do
including
the-
them in the leadership program.
We are.
Right.
Which, by the way, the applications are going great.
Cool.
We have, we're going to, the City Hall discussion will be a place where when we're talking about how you seat a committee for this building's discussion, we'll want to consider how we include youth in that discussion. That's probably the next task force.
Yeah.
We've mentioned that same idea going forward. I think I mentioned it in the staff report, but certainly planning department, our JCB staff who've done this with visioning and comp plan, certainly the commitment remains across the board, not just here. This doesn't replace anything. We're just
In
adding.
addition to.
Adding.
Cool.
I will actually say that I think this is a way better system than some of the youth committees that some of the cities have. I've seen them present at LOC events and stuff, and it feels to me like they're doing kind of make work. They're doing things that are specific to youth. They might be doing an outreach on drugs or something that's specific to youth, but they're really not tuned into this. They're really separate from what's going on in the city for a large extent, and I think this is a much more meaningful way of engaging them than a lot of those youth committees.
Well, and I think this is also a better way for us to kind of make the ask, because I think if we were to just set up a youth advisory committee on our own without that being sort of a grassroots, ask from some group of kids who wanted to be involved in the city, this is much more of an invitation, to the schools to say, hey, we're interested in you, how can we plug you into what we're already doing?
The reception from the principals really has been very positive. People are excited about it. Their students are excited about it. I think that we're going to have turnout. And, when I've spoken to Principal Gellner, she's like, I'm going to get you some amazing people, and they are going to come to all your meetings, and it's going to be great. And she is so firmly committed in her thought process. She's like, you don't have to worry. You're being a little too cautious. We have some great students who are going to be really excited to engage in this process.
Cool.
Yeah.
So there is one piece that I agree with everything that's been said so far about having a separate youth council versus integrating people. There is there is a benefit there in that you do have peer-to-peer engagement around, it's a special kind of leadership that these students are engaged in. And if we've got principals that are really excited about this, I'm wondering if there's a way we could encourage the high schools that are participating to sponsor some sort of quarterly gathering of all of the students who are serving on these committees, so that it's not the city's responsibility, but that opportunity does get presented to students to talk amongst themselves about the stuff they're doing and learning and the experiences they're having.
Absolutely. We actually had talked about doing some meetings with just the youth participants.
Great.
So it probably won't be a ton. We were looking at 2 a year, just to make sure that there was someone there that they could talk to their peers, they could talk about what they were learning, they could talk about doing some of that cross-referencing of, did you know that the city's doing this? Oh my gosh, that fits with actually what we're trying to do, and maybe getting some of the collaboration we long have wanted across boards and commissions.
Right.
And maybe it also launches a youth advisory committee, right? I mean, so, maybe this isn't enough for these engaged young people, and they want to start a youth advisory committee of some sort for the city. But I think that this is, as a first step, this is definitely the way that I think we should approach it.
far more meaningful.
And I totally biffed it when we had that. That was a big part of the conversation we've had. I don't think I put it in the staff report or put it on here, but we have, I absolutely want to, I think we talked about orientation, like once you've got some appointed folks, then we'll have like welcome to BCC Live, kind of go through that and then touch base with them over the span. So absolutely.
It's also why we have 2 on each board, is we didn't want anyone to feel like they were alone.
That might have been the problem, I think, with, I know with PSAC, it was one position, and I don't think that there was much energy, behind it from anyone. No one was really driving, conversations with the principals or, so the fact that we're really, kind of making a big effort, and then also not having one person, I think is going to be helpful.
I mean, I remember being a high school student who was the one student on a committee full of adults, and I did it. But I was weird, I was the only person who would have done that in the peer group that we were pulling from. And it was kind of alienating. So I hope that as we're going through this, if we have candidates and there are places where there's maybe interest in 2 committees and we need to make a choice about where we place folks, we can think about making sure that we try and get 2 people on the committee. If somebody's interested in the tree board and PARB and we only have 1 applicant for the tree board, let's put 2 people on PARB and not have one hanging out on tree board by themselves. So.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Especially during this pilot program.
I think the last question was, which I think we know the answer to, we have the green light to proceed. We'll continue meeting with our high school administrators and branch out, and then hopefully by mid-October we'll bring you back a resolution for you to adopt to get these things sort of in place for our pilot program. And at that time, our goal would also to be to have our collateral, whatever we're going to put out on social media, our applications, and to proceed. So
great.
There's no other questions. That's all I got for that one.
Good. Thank you.
Thanks. This is exciting.
Yeah, it is. It's cool.
All right, and sort of sticking with that theme, we have a resolution, right, there?
Yeah.
I think so.
Resolution, the City Council of the City of Milwaukee in support of the September 20th, 2019 student climate strike. This was started out of an interaction with some students from Putnam who are determined to be part of the strike and reached out to me for any help I could give them on a variety of fronts. And so this is a piece of it. I think, to my mind, the point of education is to prepare a child for their future. And if they're not going to have much of a future due to the things we are failing to do as a society, I think taking a day off of school to go protest that is exceedingly relevant. So I was with the kids today when they went to see Superintendent Utterback, and he is going to be considering their requests, demands, and getting back to them by Friday. But I told them, should we pass this tonight, I would see it delivered to him tomorrow so that he's aware that we're in support of them.
Mayor, do you want to, for the people listening at home who may not be aware of what this is about, do you want to provide a little context?
Go ahead.
Or do you want me to do that? Okay.
Sure.
So there is a global movement that is really a student-led movement to have an entire week of action to raise awareness about the need for governments to act on climate change. And the kickoff of that week is September 20th, and there will be there's a large demonstration planned for downtown Portland, and I believe it begins at 10, and there will be activities going all through the morning and all through the afternoon. And there's a region-wide push from students at high schools everywhere to participate and be a part of this. And so this is our opportunity to support them. And they are asking for support. It's not just students going to downtown. It's everyone is invited to participate. Businesses are invited to participate. Teachers, all of us, anyone who has the ability to be there is invited to participate. And obviously there are people who cannot afford to miss a day of work. That is not part of the equation. It's really an invitation to be a part of it if you can. And there are a number of businesses globally that are signaling their support and saying, go ahead, we want you to be there to their staff. So.
And so their ask of the school district is to cancel school?
No.
Or just to have an excused absence if you choose to go?
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. Basically, that's the major ask, that they don't get dinged on their eligibility for athletics. They don't get dinged on
Their list of, they asked that no tests be scheduled for that day. I'm not sure what's happening to my Surface, but I can no longer read it. There was a link in the most recent email, and if someone can maybe cite a few more examples like that.
I think it was in that letter that
Right.
the young man.
What I'm trying to read, but my Surface just did a really crazy thing.
It was in the email that.
Allowing students to do outreach inside of the schools, allowing them to, asking that staff coordinate information sharing in advance of the demonstration. Just informing all of the staff, administrators, teachers, coaches, that they're all aware of the climate strike, that clear guidelines be distributed around the whole district. Try to coordinate transportation for students who don't have easy access, work with TriMet along those lines.
Are they asking that a school do all of that, or as much of that as possible?
Those are the lists of.
asking the school for, yes.
So it's their wish list. So
Right.
I'm sure that.
I'm going to be reaching out to TriMet for them as well. And I also offered to meet them all, if they all have bikes, to meet them.
Ride down?
To begin transitioning all schools in the district to be sustainable facilities, implement climate justice curriculum, and create a student committee on climate crisis. I think those were the highlights that I saw.
Any questions?
No, and our resolution basically resolves that we're supporting the students in that participation on September 20th and encouraging businesses and citizens to participate if they're so able and so wish to. I mean, I want folks to know that it's not obligating the city to any particular functions or costs or anything like that. So.
Yeah, I think other means of expressing support is pretty broad.
So I can read it and we can make a motion, or we can make a motion and pass it, and then I can read it, however you want to do it.
Dude, you're the mayor.
All right, well, then I would entertain a motion.
I move to approve, I had to get to the right page. I move to approve the resolution in support of the September 20th, 2019 student climate strike.
I'll second.
It has been moved and seconded to approve the resolution in support of the September 20th, 2019 student climate strike. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None heard. It passes unanimously. A resolution of the City Council of the City of Milwaukee, Oregon, in support of the September 20th, 2019 student climate strike. Whereas the global climate crisis is real, man-made, and it presents an unprecedented existential threat to humans and all other living beings on this planet. And whereas, according to the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, we have until 2030 to dramatically reduce our greenhouse gas emissions and take actions to begin to draw carbon out of the atmosphere. And whereas the residents of Milwaukee have expressed their support for clear and decisive action to meaningfully act against climate change through the community's climate action plan, and whereas the youngest members of our community are those who will bear the greatest burdens of inaction and are the ones among us who also exhibit the clearest vision of the urgent need for rapid global response to climate change. And whereas September 20th, 2019 global call for climate strike is an opportunity for all Milwaukeeans to show their support for such action. Now, therefore, be it resolved by the City Council of the City of Milwaukee, Oregon, that the city fully supports the students of North Clackamas School District in their participation in the September 20th, 2019 global climate strike. And furthermore, we encourage business owners and residents to join students in participating in the climate strike and other means of expressing support for this global movement.
Thank you.
All right, so I don't forget, could we get this distributed not only to Matt, but to the principals of the North Clackamas schools, the high schools, including PWS and LaSalle, I guess?
Sure.
Thanks. Okay, upon adjournment of the regular session, council will meet in executive session pursuant to Oregon Revised Statute 192.6602I to review and evaluate the job performance of a chief executive officer or officers, employees, and staff if the person whose performance is being reviewed and evaluated does not request an open hearing. And then I have my announcements. You ready? The next First Friday event is September 6th from 5 to 9 p.m. Be sure to walk around downtown, including Main Street and 21st Avenue and all of the streets in between, to visit with local businesses and vendors. Here are some highlights for September. Celebrate the second anniversary of the Milwaukee Station Food Cart Pod with live music from the Mostly Stones from 4 to 8 p.m. This month there will be a great activity for kids up to 9 years old called Safety Street, which is a simulated driving course. The course will be set up in the parking lot of the Veterinary Cancer and Surgery Specialist, which is next to Pietro's Pizza. While there, be sure to check out the $5 bicycle helmets that will be available from Providence, Milwaukee's Community Health in Motion program. Lastly, the monthly poetry open mic event is held at St. John the Evangelist Church from 6 to 7:30 p.m. This and so much more is in store for the September 1st Friday. Join the Milwaukee Police Department and the American Legion on Saturday, September 7th from 9 a.m. to 12 p.m. for a pancake breakfast benefiting the Corporal Diffie Veterans Fund. This fund provides basic temporary assistance to veterans facing dire circumstances. The all-you-can-eat breakfast costs $10 per person, and children under 12 are only $5. Breakfast takes place at the American Legion downtown at 21st and Monroe Street. The annual On Tap and Uncorked event returns to North Clackamas Park on Saturday, September 7th from 1 to 9 p.m. The event features craft wineries, breweries, and distilleries in North Clackamas and beyond, all in a beautiful rose garden setting with food and entertainment. Early bird tickets are only $15, with a souvenir glass included. The event is a benefit for Meals on Wheels, which I just learned today is being funded even less by the federal government again. Sign up today to volunteer on Saturday, September 14th from 8:30 a.m. to 1:30 p.m. at the annual North Clackamas Watersheds Cleanup. Volunteers will gather at North Clackamas Park and then head out to several sites in the Kellogg Mounts Creek, Mount Scott, and Boardman watersheds to remove trash from our creeks. Join the Bonsai Society of Portland at their annual bonsai exhibit on Saturday, September 14th from 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. at the Milwaukee Center. The event includes displays of bonsai trees, a marketplace, hands-on classes, and demonstrations. Admission is $5, and those under the age of 12 are free. Our city manager, Ann Ober, is having another open door session on Tuesday, September 17th from 8:30 a.m. to 10 a.m. at City Hall. If you have a question, would like to raise a concern, or just want to find out more about what the city is currently doing, stop by. No sign-up is necessary, and those attending are seen on a first-come, first-served basis. Lastly, the National Council on Aging's Fall Prevention Awareness Day is on September 22nd. In support of Providence, experts will offer fall risk awareness classes throughout Oregon. Milwaukee will host a free class on Friday, September 20th from 10 a.m. to 12 p.m. at the Milwaukee Center. For more information about each of the events mentioned, please visit the city's homepage at www.milwaukeeoregon.gov. All right. Anything else?
Well, I just, on First Friday, I think there were a couple other things that really caught my eye about First Friday this time. First off, there are going to be 4 bands playing in downtown. There's going to be one at Milwaukee Station, the Son de Cuba at the Cha-Cha-Cha, the Lashbrook Brothers at Beer Store, and then School of Rock in front of this building, right?
Oh,
so we've never had a First Friday with that many bands. And on top of that, at Made in Milwaukee, they're going to have karaoke. So you can go hear other people sing, and then you can go sing yourself. They didn't mention the art here, but the artist that's going to be here in City Hall is the woman who has an author and illustrator of a children's book who has used Milwaukee buildings in her children's book. And so I'm really looking forward to seeing that. I had read about that in the Clackamas Review a few months ago, but I haven't actually seen the book, so I'm looking forward to coming here and seeing the art. And one other thing I would say is just mark your calendar for Sunday, November 17th, which is when the Milwaukee Parks Foundation will have their first ever fundraiser to raise money for our parks.
More details later.
More details to come, yeah.
Yep. And I think people should come to the open mic poetry, because I do believe that Council President Faulkner, and as well as myself, are participating in that evening, so should be interesting.
It's fun. I've done it the last, I think, 3 years or so, and it's always a really good showing. And
it is.
Lots of original work, by local talent, and performance as well. It's sort of, I've seen interpretive dance, I've seen all kinds of really good so.
Anything else?
Well, I will say we're still looking for a couple volunteers for that Safety Street thing. So if anybody's watching and would like to put in an hour and a half, we only want you to work an hour and a half, so you'd still have an hour and a half to see to enjoy First Friday. Just contact me, because we do need a few more volunteers.
Okay. Then I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
I would so move.
Second.
Been moved and seconded to adjourn. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. We are adjourned.
Hey, are we
All
meeting
right.